Hey everyone, this is Jono Bacon. Now, too many people send emails that suck, or don't get opened or clicked on, or somewhat depressingly, all three. The solution to this problem is to understand the data that ConvertKit is trying to tell you, so you can create better content that's designed for the right people. And that, my friends, is what we're going to dig into in this video. Today we're going to dig in hands-on into data and statistics inside of ConvertKit. And the good news is that there's lots of really valuable data inside of ConvertKit that we can use to influence what kind of emails we send to people, who we send them to, and how we build the best possible relationship with our audience. So let's dig right in. Now, when you log into ConvertKit and you see your dashboard, it looks a little bit like this. And first of all, you see this big green graph up here. The green is the number of people who are subscribing to your list, and the gray down here is the number of people who are unsubscribing. So as a general rule, you want to see a lot more green than gray. If you're getting a lot of unsubscribes, it means that people are just generally not jiving with the content that you're sending out, and that means that we need to make some decisions about whether that's the right kind of content to send out. So here you can see in mine, I've got a lot more green, which is great. You'll see the big chunk of gray down here, where I had 17 new subscribers, 9 cancellations, so that netted out at 8 new subscribers. And this is because I sent a broadcast out to a bunch of people with a book club that I'm running around my book, People Powered. So I'll get into that a little bit later on. You'll have anomalies like that every so often. That's completely normal. Don't worry about it. Okay. Now what we do is we get down into these numbers down here. Let me get rid of myself. So this one here, total subscribers, this is the number of people who are on your list. Now, a little bit of background here with me specifically. I'm recording this video in September 2020. Back in March 2020, which is what, 6 months ago, something like that, that's when I really only started seriously thinking about email. Before then, I always thought that email was just crap. I thought that, people just sent out like sales emails and marketing bump and coupons and special offers. And frankly, I just didn't read a lot of that email that gets shoved into the promotions folder in Gmail. But then I met up with a friend of mine and he was like, no, man, like email's really powerful. It's just that most people don't do it very well. So he said, if you do email well, you can actually get some really good results, which I've discovered since March, okay? So the reason why I'm saying this is that, when you see this number here, 1,500 might not seem like a lot of subscribers, and it isn't, to be honest with you, but that's because I really only started doing it about 5 or 6 months ago. Now this number down here, which is open rate, average open rate, this is the number of people who click on the emails that you send them and open them, right? So when you get an email, let me bring me back. So when you get an email from a list, the software is usually tracking whether you click on that subject line and open it into your email reader, okay? Now this isn't tracking whether you read the email, whether you engage with it in some way, whether you read all of the content. It's just whether it got opened up. And this is one of 2 critical metrics that we use for measuring email efficacy, right? That's open rate and click rate. Now the average industry standard number for open rate tends to be around 23%. It does vary a little bit from industry to industry, but 23% or 25%, if you want to be generous, is a good ballpark figure to kind of aim for. So you can see here, I've got 39.1%. This is pretty high, okay? And I'm going to get into why that is, because I think it's because I send value to people, useful information as opposed to just sales crap, which nobody really wants to read. Now we move over to the click rate. Now, this is how many people will click on one or more links in your email, okay? Now, as a general rule, when you're sending emails to people, you only want to have one thing that they can click on. One thing that I personally can't stand is newsletters. I think newsletters, first of all, there's too much information in there, and the information that's in a newsletter never goes deep enough. And there's usually about 10 or 15 different links in a newsletter. And you don't know which of those links people are clicking on and whether it's particularly valuable. You can figure that out, but it starts getting complicated. So I generally put one link in each email that people click on, and not every email that I send to people has something to click on, and I'll get to that in a second. But the general average click rate tends to be between 2 and 4%, okay? So you want to be better than that. So my click rate here is 7.5%, so again, I think that's really good. That to me tells me that the content that I'm sending, this combo of open rate and click rate, I'm on the right track, that generally my strategy with email is working, okay? Here you can see the total number of emails that have been sent. So again, since I started doing this really in March, I've sent 32,000 emails. And then here you can see the number of new subscribers. So I've had 1 person sign up to my list today. Now, one thing that's important as you're looking at this is you can use the date field up here to kind of go back and just get a general sense. If I go to, since the beginning of me setting up the list, you can see that I'm generally having a couple of people here joining each day. And these big spikes, when you see big spikes like this, you've got to ask yourself the question, why is that? And that's one of the things I think in reading data is, why have I got this number of people who are coming in here? And I can tell you why this is. This is when I've run webinars. This is when I've run specifically targeted events to kind of get people in and sign up to my list. And I haven't done these for quite a while, like you can see since June, because I've been working on a bunch of new business stuff. But these are, these big events like webinars are a great way to bring people in. Now, if we look at total subscribers, again, you can see where I started here. So this 400 or so, this is when I brought people in from MailChimp. So I had a MailChimp list set up and I wasn't really using it. And that's when I brought people in there. It was mainly people who pre-ordered my book. And then here you can see the total number of subscribers just generally growing. And these bumps that you can see, again, these are generally focused things like webinars where I've done interviews with podcasts or whatever else. So when you're reading this data, try and see where do we have the big spikes and what did I do that generated that big spike? And then that can give you a bit of a sense of, what's having the impact. Like I know, for example, from reading this, that I need to do more webinars. I need to run more webinars. I've just been too busy. It's a crime that I haven't done one for so long. You folks shouldn't listen to me. That's the moral of this particular story. Anyway, so that's useful. I'm not going to dig into purchases because that goes into a whole separate level of detail, and I just want to focus on email as opposed to purchases here. And literally today, as I'm recording this ConvertKit, I added this new feature around deliverability, and you can go pro to unlock this, which I was considering doing, but just as a side point, when I looked at this thing, which tells you about pro, it says here $790 a month. I think that might be a typo. I think ConvertKit screwed up. I think it's actually $79 a month based on my current plan. Anyway, so that gives you a bit of a sense of what you can look at. That will enable you to learn about deliverability, which I actually really care about, and I'm probably going to unlock that if it's not $790 a month, which is frankly ridiculous. Okay, so what we really want to look into, I think, when we're figuring out how to make our email better is the performance of the individual email campaigns, right? So if I click on automations up here and then go to sequences, so this is the list of sequences that I have set up, and I'm going to go to my main sequence. So when people come and sign up on my list, this is kind of a longer tail of emails that I tend to send people. And let's go to reports. And what this tells me here is, so first of all, I've got 937 subscribers who are on this automation. And by the way, let me just go back because I want to explain something real quick. You may have noticed, eagle-eyed members may have noticed this thing where it says 100 million day sequence with 20 emails. The reason why I've done that is because a little hack in ConvertKit is if you want the sequence to never end, like this main sequence here, I don't want it to ever stop. So what you can do is if I click on this sequence, you'll see here at the end, I've got this little thing here that says end cap, okay? And, oh, hang on, let me get rid of myself so you can see it. So you can see here I've got this thing called end cap. And what I did is I say when to send after 99999 days. So this one will basically never get sent. Like this is way off, like years off into the future. This will never get sent. So it means that if I add that there, basically I never ever have this email chain run out. It's just a little hack that I discovered in ConvertKit. Because the problem is that usually when you run through it, bring me back. Usually when you run through a sequence, what happens is when that sequence ends, it stops and then your unsubscribers don't get anything else. If you add an email to that sequence, they're no longer subscribed to that sequence and therefore you won't, they won't get the new emails. So this means that I can just regularly drop in emails. For example, I added this one, which is in draft. So what I do is I put again, you can't see me. I put this one after the end cap, and then this means that, once I've reviewed this and I'm happy with it, I can then kind of bring it forward and schedule it in. So I put my draft ones at the end here, okay? All right. Anyway, let's get back to the statistics, which is why you're watching this bloody video. So when we look at the reports, I think this is really, really important because what you want to look at is a few different things. You want to look at the open rate and the click rate, and this will give you a reasonable sense of whether that content is resonating with people. Now let's just use the ballpark figure of 23% open rate and let's say 3% click rate as our numbers we want to focus on. So with this one here, be careful, too much data can be a bad thing. 41% open rate, that's very good. That's almost double the industry standard, and click rate, I mean, this is almost double that. So this to me is an email that should definitely stay in. Now you may be thinking, okay, well, you've had 9 subscribers, but bear in mind that this has been sent out 1,100 times, right? So we've had 9 subscribers. This is a tiny proportion of people who have unsubscribed after receiving this email. And I think the reason why I get this here is because usually when I have people subscribe to my list, they subscribe for a reason. They join a webinar, they download like some free chapters from People Powered. I send them some specific emails, an email sequence about that thing, such as 5 emails about that webinar. And then what you're seeing here, this broader email sequence kicks in, and then that's when they see all of this stuff. So sometimes I think when they get this email, this is when we're stepping into more general content for them, and we may get a few more unsubscribes. But this is so small in the scheme of things that it's just, frankly, it's statistically insignificant, so I don't care. Now this one over here, we've got Salesforce have built a community of 10 million members. This has got a slightly lower open rate, so I think people are opening it. They find the content title interesting, but much lower click rate. But if we take a look at this, hang on, let me go back to the content so we can actually look at what's in that email. You can see I've got a number of different links in here, but they're not getting clicked on. So now this tells me, well, maybe this email isn't quite so interesting for people. Okay, so maybe that's something we might want to consider pulling out and removing. Now this one down here, defining an audience persona, including a template, again, rocking open rate, but this click rate is through the roof, right? 8%, that's over double the industry standard if we're looking at 3%. Relatively small number of unsubscribes. Now, what this tells me is, first of all, this email is valuable to people, but more importantly, what you'll see when we go to this email is that I provide audience personas template that I give to the reader. So I show them how to use it and then how to fill out the template. So what that tells me is that sending them something, they like that because they're clicking on that. So my hypothesis at this point is maybe I should send them more attachments because they may get more value out of that, okay? So what you do is I'm not going to go through all of these because I'll bore the pants off you, but you just go through each of these and get a sense of which of these are particularly exciting. So let's look for any that really stand out. Now this one, for example, here, 8% click rate, 2 free chapters. Again, I'm sending them free content. This is content from my book, People Powered. What else have we got? 6%. A video, 8 practical recommendations to squeeze more value out of your video, right? Now this has got a lower open rate, but people seem to be really clicking on it. That would tell me that the video in question in here, so let's go and take a look at that. Which one was it? 8 practical recommendations, right? So this one, the fact that it's got a high click rate, this tells me that people are really interested in going and watching that video, okay? So that's one thing I definitely recommend you do. Go through and look at all of these data points. I tend to do it every week and then get a sense of how it works. Now, another thing that you can do here as well, another kind of sequence, is when you're sending emails after, for example, after they've signed up to a webinar. So let's say we go to, let me pick one. Let's say the People Power Pack, okay? This is where I send people, let me show you what this looks like, okay? So when I have this offer on my website where people can go and they can pop in their email address and everything, and they get a couple of free chapters from People Powered, audiobook chapters, whatever else. I'll put a link to this in the video description below so you can go and sign up for it if you want to. Now, so these are the emails I send to people, okay? What happens is they get these emails and then they go into that longer chain that I've just mentioned earlier on. Now this is useful because this again gives me a sense of what kind of content people really care about. So for example here, obviously they're signing up to get the book chapters, so we've got a really high click and open rate there. It makes total sense. And I'm not surprised we get a lot of unsubscribers here. I mean, again, in the scheme of things, 900 sends, it's not that many people unsubscribing. But the reason why people are probably unsubscribing is they get the chapters and then they don't want the email anymore. And I don't blame them. I'd probably do the same thing, to be honest with you. But here we can also see nail down your target community audience with your template. That's the one I showed you earlier on. So now we're seeing this working in 2 different contexts, and it's performing. So this is definitely an email that we need to keep in. This one has got a super high open rate, and a high click rate. This is a free training session that I deliver for people that's automated, and clearly that's very interested, although we've got a small number of sends here. So this to me is looking promising, but because we've got a small number of sends, I would take it with a pinch of salt. But you want to do that for each of your different email sequences. As a general rule, what I've found is that when you send people actual content, like you don't tease them with something else, you send them a self-contained piece of useful guidance or input, you tend to get higher open and click rates. So that's the kind of strategy you want to take here. Now, the other area that we really want to look into in terms of our data is our landing pages and forms. Now, I'm going to skip over landing pages because I just don't use landing pages. I do everything on my website. Like for example here, I embed the form onto my website. I just like everything being in one place. That's just the way I'm kind of wired up. But I have a lot of forms, right? So let's look at a couple of different forms. So this is the one for the people powered pack, okay? Now let's go and take a look at the form here. Which is, where am I? I'm blind, this one. So this is the form, and now we can also go up here and we can click on reports. Now, what's interesting to me here is we've had 510 people who've hit this page. Like, I haven't really been promoting it very extensively, it's fairly new. And from that, we've had 243 subscribers, and that's given us a 47% conversion rate. Now, in terms of general conversion rates, it tends to vary from platform to platform. Like your conversion for a Facebook ad, for example, is going to be very different to a conversion for a page like this. But I think you should be generally aiming for somewhere between 5 and 10% conversion. So a 47% conversion is redonkulous, right? That's really, really good. And I think the reason why this is so high is that I don't tend to promote this very widely, but I mention it at the end of when I do when I do training sessions and webinars and things like that, I'll mention it. So I think everybody who comes to this, they've probably sat through an hour of me talking to them, and therefore they're very interested, and therefore they're a high converting group of people, okay? But let's look at another example. So if I go to my website, and let's go and find a blog post. So for example, let's do this one. How to start a brand new online community even without technical experience. So I put this out a couple of days ago. Now you can see here, this is a regular blog post, but at the bottom we've got this little get connected box, okay? And this is where someone can pop in and sign up. So the idea is that they read this blog post, they think it's interesting, they're like, I want more of his crap. They pop in their details and then they get signed up, okay? So let's go to the form for that. Hang on, helps if I click on the right thing, people. So this is this one. This is General Members Form Slim, okay? What a nattily titled form that I've got right there. If I click on reports here, this is more in line with what I think you get with more general mass, I guess you could say a mass market approach. So here, I've had 13,000 visitors who've hit these different blog posts. And from that, 119 people have signed up, and that's just under 1% conversion. Now, I think that's okay. I don't mind that, because as far as I'm concerned, this is like free subscribers, right? I'm just putting blog posts out. What I'd love to see in ConvertKit, which they don't have a feature for right now, is to see that conversion rate over time. I'd like to be able to see, if I make certain changes, does my conversion rate go up or down? But we'll see if ConvertKit adds that. But, this is a lot of people, a smaller proportion of people are joining, and then we're getting the conversion rate. Now, I think this is difficult for general blog posts because some of your blog posts are going to be super interesting and insightful, some aren't. They're going to vary in terms of the quality and the content and your audience and things like that. So this is a bit of a catch-all. So shooting for like a 1%, and this is a little lower than I would like, but I think it's okay. But now let's look at another example, okay? And let's do this. So I recently launched this thing called the People Power Book Club. So the idea is you come and read the book. We're going to read a chapter a week, and I'm going to do calls with everybody. Again, we've got the form in here. Now, one thing you may have noticed here is this is not the same form on each of these different pages. These are different forms, and that's important because then we can track the results independently. If you have one form and use it everywhere on your website, you're not going to really get a good sense of how everything's performing. So the People Power Book Club is this one. So let's go to the reports. And this is now telling me that I've had 416 visitors, 121 people have subscribed, 29% conversion rate. So this is, again, I think this is a very, very healthy conversion rate. We haven't really had a lot of visitors to this. I only launched this a week ago. So, and I haven't done any Facebook advertising or anything like that because it's kind of a niche group of people. So this gives you a sense of, okay, well, which of these things are working? Which of these forms are working? Is the content that I'm putting out there converting? Now, one of the things that you should evaluate when you're looking at kind of when you're looking at this and you're thinking, okay, well, what does that conversion rate tell me? Does it mean that the content's interesting? Does it mean that people want to sign up? What is it? It's all of the above, right? One of the key influences on conversion rate is the quality of your copy, right? So for example, if you look at the People Powered Book Club here, I've got a video that walks through how it works. I took some care and attention in like picking the headline, writing the copy, making it simple, clear, visual, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm getting a pretty good conversion rate here as well, okay? So that's kind of what I would recommend, how you think about this. And then look at these referrers and get a sense of, okay, well, where is my traffic coming from? Because this shows you, you know, the number of visitors, the number of subscribers, and therefore the conversion rate, because you might find some surprising places where people are converting from. The tricky thing, as you can see here, let me get rid of myself, is that sometimes these links are not particularly useful. Like this one here, for example, is just going to go to Twitter. It doesn't actually take you anywhere useful. Linux Unplugged, okay, I mean, that's kind of cool. 13 people, I mean, it's a very small number of people, but we got a reasonable conversion rate. But you want to look at that and say, okay, well, maybe I spend more time in those particular areas, and that will help me to get more people in there as well. So the key thing here, as I want to bring this into a close, is look at all of these different elements. Look at the open rate and the click rate in your emails. Look at the conversion rate in your forms. Look at the general number of subscribers and unsubscribers, and ask yourself the question: how does this give me a sense of the quality of my content? So for example, when I showed you the email earlier on, let me go back to it. So when I showed you, let's go here, and let's go here. So for example, this, let's do, I think it was let's go to my reports. So let's pick one here. Let's say this one, the defining audience personas. This one is performing really well. And I think the question you want to ask yourself is why? It's going to be a combination of the topic that you've got, the headline, and it's going to be a combination of the content. So if we go to the content, very clear, written, broken down into steps. There's an attachment there as well, but it's also going to be who you send the content to. And one thing that I've really learned quite significantly in experimenting with email since, for 6 months or whatever, is the responsiveness that you get to your content, your open rate, your click rate, the level of unsubscribes is massively dependent on sending the right content to the right people, okay? And this is one of the reasons why, if you look in my sign-up forms here, for example, here, I ask people for role, and I also ask them for industry. Now, I don't really use the industry very much, but I use the role a lot to send the right kinds of content to the right kinds of people, okay? So you're gonna wanna make sure that you're targeting that as appropriately. Let me give you an example of this. So if we go back to ConvertKit and click on broadcasts. So broadcasts are when you send an individual message out to to a group of people. It's not part of a sequence. You send it out to a specific group of people, okay? Now, let's take one as an example. So this is actually kind of a funny example. This is a mistake that I made. I said, I'm gonna let you know about the People Powered Book Club, okay? So this went out to everybody, because I thought this is gonna be, everybody who's on my list is probably gonna be interested in the book that I've written. Therefore, I sent out a note about, this particular book club, this thing over here. What's kind of funny is that I didn't put the link in the email. This was so nauseatingly bad. I talk about, hey, we're doing this cool book club, and then I didn't actually put a link into it. Whoops. Anyway, but you can see here that we got a 37% open rate and a 6.5% click rate, and that worked out really well because I think this is an email that is of general interest to my audience. But in some cases, I'll want to send out an email to a specific group of people. So for example, this one, inviting you to my Slack channel for People Powered Book Club. So this is the people who've signed up for this. I only send it to them. And as you can see, I get a super high open rate, and there's no click rate because there's nothing to click on in the email because I send them a separate Slack invite. And we had one unsubscribe, which frankly I was kind of surprised by. Like, why did you sign up for this thing if you didn't want to join? But maybe they changed their mind. But the reason why we didn't get hardly any unsubscribes here is because it was tightly targeted to that audience. If I was to send, for example, an email about a very, very specific niche element of building communities to my whole audience, I'll get tons of unsubscribes because there'll be many executives and marketeers and product people who won't be interested in that, and therefore they'll unsubscribe. So again, this is where we determine what kind of content is valuable. Is the headline interesting? But also, are we sending it to the right kinds of people? So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. I hope this was useful. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like, tap that little subscribe button, and of course, that cheeky little notification bell. And see you on the other side.